Hannibal for
Yes.
episode 11, season 3, and The Beast from the Sea. This was
Hmm.
a super intense episode. I'm going to take point here for a little bit because I want to mention how different the first 20 minutes alone are from everything else. The Red Dragon stuff for the season has been playing out pretty similar to the books with its own little Hannibal flavor, little twist here and there. And then it all
Right.
started to change last episode when Will and Francis Dollarhide met in, I guess, the basement of the art museum, and he devoured the Great Red Dragon painting by William Blake. And now it feels like all bets are off because in the original source material, their confrontation happens in the finale. That's it. It's
Right.
it. They don't meet before that, and it's quite shocking. It's like a Blade Runner type thing where you kind of
Hmm.
pace the whole movie, and then when they meet, they clash ideologies, theologies, and all that. It just explodes in their faces, and it's great. And now it's like this is. I have no idea where they're going now. This is pretty much going to be all new material. So just as in traditional Hannibal fashion, they're going to twist and they're going to turn and they're going to make good things happen. But Emily, why don't you go ahead and say what you thought about this super intense episode? Because that home invasion happens very differently in the books.
Yeah. I was definitely living on the edge of my seat for the majority of this episode. I certainly wasn't expecting Francis to go after Will's family that soon. I mean, I knew that it was on its way because we could see all of Hannibal's machinations with trying to get Will's address and ultimately feeding that to the Red Dragon. Um, I love that they made Molly sort of a hero of the situation and that she was on her toes from the get-go and she took that bullet in the process, but ultimately was able to get herself and her son out alive. I love the way that Molly is portrayed in the show because you can so clearly see why Will fell in love with her. Like we've gotten all this background and all the other stories and arcs that we've had with Will, and we have our own attachment to him. So it seems strange when, like, oh man, like one episode later after that mid-season finale of sorts, all of a sudden he's married now. But I can very much see why he is invested in this woman because she is smart and she understands. She's aware of her surroundings. She's aware of him. And I think that that's something that's really important. But yeah, in this episode, we see Will Graham is kind of awoken in a whole new way. And once again, Hannibal is playing both sides of the chessboard with the Red Dragon and Will, and ultimately is trying to use the Red Dragon to get Will to become who he thinks he can be and should be and might be. And that becomes so clear at the very end when Will finally confronts him. There's usually one scene in the episode where I just laugh my ass off because I can't deal with or process the pressure in any other way. But the point when Will storms in at the end and he's just like, "I've had it with you sons of bitches," and like
That was
that,
great. That was
I
great.
I died. Like those words coming out of Will Graham was, oh, these are end times, baby. Um, but yeah, and just the way that Hannibal kind of breaks everything down, and like we see the atrocity of who Hannibal is once again. I think that we as an audience kind of get lured into even a false sense of security with him. We kind of laugh off the things he does because they're so over the top and, like I said, difficult to process otherwise. But the fact that he is willing to sick this monster on Will's family in order to get Will to be closer to him, it's it's a little bit overly obsessive girlfriend status, I
Oh yeah.
think, but he just wants Will to himself. Um, but yeah, I think that sort of the trifecta of Hannibal, Red Dragon, Will Graham is stronger than it's ever been, and that we're going to see something crazy and volatile on the part of Will. I've had, like, the entire episode, I had Bedelia's words ringing in my head, just like when she was talking to Will about how capable he is of righteous violence and how he's sort of betrayed himself by thinking that he could save Francis from himself when he's been turned against his own family. And yeah, I just think it was a really well crafted and thrilling episode. Lots of humor, lots of tragedy, of course, as Francis loses Reba, and we really see the fight inside of Francis, unlike ever before, and just how much he's resisting being overtaken by the red dragon. So now the question is, where is that red dragon going to go exactly? Because at this point, it looks like it's going to go flying into Will Graham. Who knows at this point? But like you said, all bets are off. I have no idea. We have 2 episodes left in which heaven and hell and the earth in between are going to be moved and shaken and shattered. And I'm ready for it, as I'll ever be.
That's probably the best way to put it. Ready as we'll ever be, because I don't know how you get ready for this stuff. Especially the house invasion was just so intense and so thrilling. Like it was just one of those sequences where you kind of forget about the world around you for a second, because you're just so drawn to the edge of your seat and so fixated on what's happening on screen. Like I lost track of time. Like everything just stopped for me during that sequence. I really loved. There's a callback to, of course, my favorite Manhunter, where Francis Dollarhide puts the face mask over his eyes, and he kind of looks like Daredevil now.
I know, he did look like Daredevil.
With like uglier teeth and murder and stuff like that. You know, there's minor differences. And yeah, in the original sequences, it's a fake out. It's always been a fake out where they read that. Well, first of all, it's a letter written on toilet paper or paper towels, I believe. But that's how they communicate through newspaper, tabloids, and really complicated process. Here it's still complicated, but Brian Fuller narrowed it down to just the phone calls, and that it works because more modern times and such. And so when the scene, or the episode opens up with the scene that ends with Hannibal telling Francis to save himself and kill them all. That was originally just written. And so hearing that, I'm so like, oh man, hearing this stuff out loud it's so good. It's Hannibal, you're too good to us. But yeah, that the home invasion sequence always been a fake out, and then it turns out it's the FBI raiding the house to make sure everyone's okay, and then they take him away to some discreet location. And then of course Molly doesn't get shot, and you barely hear anything about Will Graham's son. He's always been there, but never really had a big part. And I like this new further exploration of that. For a second, I kind of thought Molly and Will were just gonna not work for a second. Like obviously they love each other very much, and I think this episode really did a good job just further establishing how much they care for each other. And yeah, Molly kicked ass this episode. Good, she's a great mom. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But I thought they were gonna call it quits just for their own safety. And I was like, no, don't do that. No, please don't. That'll be sad. Don't do that, please. But no, they didn't. I think they're gonna stick it out, and that's great. And yes, hearing Will Graham just say like, "I'm sick of you," that's so good.
I'm amazed you said that before.
Yeah, and I think this proves that he's a totally different person now. He's got a semblance of peace, and so naturally Hannibal tries to take that from him because he's a real SOB.
Yeah.
And I just think I think some people are agreeing with what Hannibal's saying, that if Will Graham cared so much, he wouldn't have come back to the field, and I disagree. I think Hannibal's just trying to get into his head again. And that it's what Molly said. It's that if he didn't go, then him not being able to save people would have just caused him as much pain.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great episode. Really knocked me off my feet, this one. There's so little left of book material and movie material that I'm not complaining. It's just like I know they're gonna explore new avenues as they did here, and it's frightening and exciting at the same time. And I'm worried for everyone's well-being because anything goes with this show, and I like all these characters. Everyone who's died I've liked for the most part too. So
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be painful, and I don't want it to end. But there's only two more, and
Yeah.
it's just so good. It's so good.
Yep. I feel you there. I mean, I still like I'll never forget just the way that I fell in love with the show in the beginning, and it's so different and yet been so consistently amazing the entire way. Like I feel like there's been more than 3 seasons even just because of the and I think probably that's partially due to the fact that they split the material like in half to fit into one season, like what with the Europe adventures and then coming back for Red Dragon. But I think it's a testament to how powerful the show is and how wonderfully it's dealt with all of the available material and then some, bringing characters like Bedelia, who from what I understand did not exist in the books and hasn't appeared in other iterations. And like, you know, the idea of Hannibal having this kind of companion who's just as twisted as he is and yet maybe more well adapted on the outside. Anyway, this is probably like series review stuff. I'll hold back for now, but
No, but it's good to talk about because this show is so filled with goodness and so filled with easy conversation pieces. It's hard to stop talking about it, but I think that's it for this episode. Unless you have any final thoughts.
Well, I think pretty much just bracing myself for the impact of whatever is going to go down now.
All right,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm shaking in my boots, to be honest.